Tonight on Oxygen Tango Live, a premium chit-chat with the one and only Nayon Kang. Welcome back to Oxygen Tango Live. Megan, how are things?
Dave, things are pretty good. I'm an 8 today, which is it's almost alarming to be an 8.
Riding high.
I have one thing I want to mention real quick. This necklace lived in the front desk at Oxygen for a long time because we found it after Malanga. It's a beautiful gold necklace with a green 4-leaf clover. I just decided to start wearing it until I find the person that it belonged to. So take a look, and if it's yours, I would love to give it back to you.
Okay. Please just write connect@oxygentango.com if this is your necklace, and we'll return it to you. So we're going to bring on all of our outstanding lost and found items on the show, one by one, and hope that someone claims them.
I've always been prepared. Pretty much all of the water bottles that I use were abandoned at the studio at one point or the other. I always wait for somebody to write in to say, why are you using my water bottle? But it hasn't happened yet.
All my underwear comes from the studio, but no one ever gets to see it, so.
Damn. Wow. That's where it's like a whole new level of community.
Nayon, we can hear you. Nayon hasn't come on the show yet, but she's making a lot of noise behind the scenes. We are going to bring her on shortly, though. Megan, why don't you tell us a little bit about our exciting guest?
Yes. So, if you've been around Oxygen any amount of time, you certainly know Miss Nayon Kang. Not least of her remarkable attributes is that she also runs Oxygen's Instagram account, even during this time of the pandemic when we're shut down. We had Nayon early in Oxygen Tango Live's history when we weren't doing full-length interviews yet, just to hear about her work with KYCC as somebody who was much more on the front lines in the pandemic than most of us are. It's just time. We're kind of going back and getting the people who didn't get the full hour. So it's time to bring on Nayon. And I think this is a good time to mention that this is actually our 40th show.
Wow, 40 shows. They flew by.
Which is why I'm wearing makeup.
I heard that you could only get Nayon to come on the show by promising to wear makeup.
Dave, we lost your audio. I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, I think I could be wrong. I think they can hear me on the show. You can't hear me at all?
No, I can't hear you at all. I can hear you muffled in the other room, but I can't hear you at all. So maybe we want to bring on Nayon.
All right, interesting. Well, I'm not sure if the
there you are.
If the audience can hear me or not, but
yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, here's Nayon. Oh, I should just mention, we're streaming on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to join the chat live, though, we recommend doing that on YouTube. We check that more frequently. Without further ado, here is Nayon Kang.
Hi, Nayon.
Hi, Megan. Hi, Dave. Hi, everyone.
And do you want to introduce your friend?
This is one of my two friends, one of my two men. This is Ninja.
Hi, Ninja.
There. Hi, Ninja.
How long have you had Ninja?
Oh, probably 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
And he's a rescue, and they have no idea how old he is, but so he could be 18 for all I know.
Did you go to a rescue and get him, or was this sort of deal where he just kind of walked up to your back door one day?
No, he actually wandered into our preschool at KYCC, and they fostered him for a while, and they gave him a name, Chato, which is I think ugly or scrunched up face, and then they tried to connect him with other people, but just wouldn't stick. He would keep running away, and then I took him.
Oh, why did you name him Ninja?
Oh, because when I would like do things, I would turn around and he's right behind me. So he comes out of nowhere. So I called him Ninja. And then I was like, oh, the second one, which is another rescue from the same friend that connected me at KYCC. I was like, oh, let's make him like kind of the same thematic thing. So I named him Samurai. And the third one, should I ever get one, should be Shogun.
Nice, I like it. Ninja looks like the kind of dog that you might keep in a purse. Do you ever keep him in a purse?
I would, but he is so difficult to socialize. I can't take him out in public. Like I tried, and he's no good. He's no good.
What is he? He just like sits in the corner smoking cigarettes, won't talk to anybody.
No, that's the other one. That's the other one. He is super chill. This one will attack people. He has like the small dog complex where he thinks he's stronger and like bigger. He thinks he has to protect me. So he's like, I'm afraid he's gonna bite somebody. I'm gonna get sued. So he's like the aggressive one. And then the other one is so nice, but the other one gets attacked. This one attacks, and the other one gets attacked.
Wait, so does Ninja attack Samurai?
Oh, that too. Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Oh, Ninja.
Yeah.
Well, so, we don't know what Ninja had to put up with early in life, so.
Exactly. Who knows?
We'll be talking a little more about that later.
Right. Stay tuned.
All right, Nayon, so for the people watching who might not know, can you just give us a little introduction, who you are, what part of town you stay in, what you do for work, and let's just start there.
Okay, well, that's such a broad question, but I live in San Pedro. I am a mom of 2 dogs. I'm a wife to a man. I am in the nonprofit world, but going back a little bit, I was born in South Korea. I came to America in 1984, and I settled in Koreatown. And
how old were you?
I was 7. So I had Korea, their school year is calendar year. So I think I had just done half of first grade and I came here. So I kind of consider myself pretty bred, in LA, Koreatown. And I kind of moved around to Claremont, West Covina, lived in West LA for 10 years. But primarily I kind of identify as living, playing, or working in K-Town.
Nice. Do you remember Korea at all?
I do, and it's also going to tie to our theme later, but I do because I came when I was 7, so I remember a lot of my preschool and kindergarten days. We lived on the border of where the city life and the rural life kind of comes together. So I lived in this high-rise apartment looking down at the farmland. So we were right in the, but a lot of my memories is really just kind of, I think, being a daughter of a very flamboyant, colorful, charismatic man, and a daughter of a woman who was very kind of educated, refined, and classy. So I feel it was the clashing of the 2 worlds and them trying to figure each other out as young adults, and me being a child into that. I saw, I think, a lot of colors, sometimes violence, and a lot of just interesting primal memories before coming to America. Yeah.
And what was the impetus for moving here, if it's okay to ask?
Yeah, so a lot of in terms of Korean American migration, they primarily happened in the 70s and 80s. And for our family, my grandmother, who was such a badass lady, she was like a woman in a man's world. She was a loan shark. She had tons of kids. She had, I think, a bar. So she was pretty ahead of her time and very brave. she came to America in the 70s and then brought everyone over. So I came in the 80s with my parents. So everything is kind of due to her pioneerism. Yeah, coming to America. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what brought your grandma over? Was it business or?
I don't know. You know what? It could have been actually my aunt first, then to my grandma. But that's when they allowed a lot of families to bring over family members after they're the first ones to come here. So there was like a flood of Koreans. And the reason why Koreatown is called Koreatown is because the port of entry in the beginning was K-Town. So that's where all the
Oh,
Koreans, because that's where people settled, one of the many places in America where people settled. Then what happened is people kind of got situated, acculturated. Then they moved to the suburbs or like outside of K-Town, like to Gardena, Torrance, La Crescenta, what's on the west side and the east side, like, what is that? Like Rowan Heights, Diamond Bar. So people migrated out. So the port of entry was no longer Cape Town. It became like other cities when the latter immigrant groups came.
neat. Cool. Okay, so growing up in K-Town in the 90s, what was that like?
It was, I really pride myself in growing up in like a very diverse elementary school. And then in the high school, because in the middle I moved away, but I graduated from LA High. It's literally called Los Angeles High School, where the thing that we talked about the most was the fact that there were more than 70 languages being spoken in our high school. So it was,
Wow.
yeah, and I didn't even know there were more than 70 languages. So
Me neither.
I had no idea. Yeah, that it was like very like there was a lot of pockets of immigrant populations there. There were like kids who were like first time even going to high school, much less college. So it's very diverse. Like when I look at my old pictures from high school, it's like we had like the waterfall, like bangs and stuff, and like, like the daily lips and stuff like that. But what I remember the most is like how diverse, like it wasn't like a bunch of Korean kids or, other group kids. Everybody was all mixed up. So I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a very diverse high school. Yeah.
What were you like in high school? Were you like popular kids, nerds, theater kids, goths? Where were you?
I was in the decathlon and the debate team, which makes me sound smart, but actually I feel like I was like a C student in those things. So although I was in those things, I didn't know what was going on. So I was in some
Wait.
of the.
I think of decathlon as an athletic event.
Oh, right. Sorry. It's an academic decathlon. Sorry. So there's like 10 subjects where you have to compete with other school kids in science and math and.
Oh, are you taking tests or is it like a live quiz or what's that?
Yeah, so it's like an intramural thing, but like in an academic sense. So you meet up with other kids and you like have competitions. You go to like these big hotels and you like compete and you get medals. And I was really not that smart, so it was a good exposure. But I was president of a lot of clubs, like multicultural club, and I forgot what other club. But I did go into a lot of leadership roles that I was not ready for, which I think partly is because people just maybe think I'm responsible, and maybe as a firstborn, I just put out that energy. But I got a lot of leadership roles early, so even though I wasn't ready, it gave me a lot of practice for latter opportunities.
If you'll allow me, I'd like to rephrase that "not that smart" piece of it because there's just no god dang way. It sounds like if you weren't feeling that smart, that's something that the school was doing. I don't think that was on you.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
gotta go ahead and put that out there. You're sharp as a tack.
Thanks. I'm trying to keep up with the rest of the world.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, you're a natural leader, natural organizer. I've seen just at Oxygen, like you I mean, you almost single-handedly filled your Tango challenge just by pulling people into it with you. So that's very easy for me to picture that you were sort of president of a lot of things. How did you feel when you were in high school? Like for me, I was very much like I was involved in a lot of stuff, but socially like very much rejected, like very nerdy, like not many friends, like bullied quite a bit. Like what was your social experience in high school?
I describe my childhood and my teenage years as like a blur because, and this is partly why I describe myself as trying to like keep up with other kids, and that I don't think I was really stable as a child growing up, and my environment wasn't stable. So in my personal life, and in my family life growing up, there was so much violence and addiction that school was like I wasn't even. I don't think I was present. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It was just an escape. I didn't have a lot of energy to even think about my world and how I was navigating high school, because so much of the drama at home for me was like just taking up so much mind space. So I almost feel like it um, made me more compassionate and empathic and highly developed in other ways, but very stunted in other ways.
Mm,
Because I
I
felt very
identify with that. Thanks
Mhm.
for sharing that. Yeah, that rings really true for me in a lot of ways. School, yeah, I also had a like, very unstable home life, and school was very much a refuge. And my teachers very much became, I was getting the kind of praise and recognition that I really desperately needed from my parents. I was getting that at school. And so I still to this day like have such a teacher's pet. Like I love being a student. If I have to accomplish a goal, I have to like hire somebody to teach it to me, because then I know like my desire to please my teacher will like pull me through any reticence I have about sticking to that goal. Um, yeah, it's I think it's often the background of high achievers and people who go on to be leaders in their community often started off, yeah, just having to deal with a lot of crap
Mhm.
from an early age.
Mhm.
Um, so it makes a lot of sense then. So you graduate high school. What was the next stop there?
Yeah, so a little prior to high school, because of some of the stuff that was going on in my home, um, the biggest question for me at the forefront of my mind is, why do people hurt each other? Especially family members or people who supposedly love each other. Why do people even get hurt? So as a child, I had questions I couldn't answer because I was a child. And that was just always like the question of my mind that I was trying to answer. And in middle school, I went to my friend's house, and her sister, her much older sister, was, I think, in community college at the time. She had taken a Psych 101 class, and her psych book was in her sister's bookshelf. And I was, I think, in eighth grade, and I was like, "Can I borrow that?" Not knowing what the hell it was, because I was so just hungry for answers about life and people. So I borrowed this book. It was just like a very thick textbook that I read as a child, and I didn't know what it meant, but that actually led me to this kind of general direction of, I want to help people. I want to answer questions for myself selfishly about why the world or people act or function the way they do. So I ended up applying to UCLA and getting in and studying psychology. So with that, I didn't know how people became therapists, and that was what I wanted to do, which is I want to like help people, and I think helping people means counseling, because I didn't know how you were supposed to help people. And all I knew about helping people or being a therapist is what I see on TV, which is you need to be a psychiatrist or you need to have this private office where people lie on the couch. I didn't know that majority of therapy and mental health services are provided by social workers and people who get a master's in marriage and family therapy. So that is what led to my initial college time studying psychology and later actually going to social work because that's how I thought I was going to be a therapist.
I see. Well, did you find the answer as to why people hurt each other even though they love each other?
Yes, and I'm still learning, and I think I am learning as through me as the learning subject. So my kind of background in trauma helped me realize why people unintentionally and sometimes with very noble intent, despite doing their best, end up really hurting people they love or hurting the community. And that really informs how I work inside of my organization and how I want to impact the community.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so so I'm going to switch the order a little bit here because we have arrived at the meat of the discussion that we intended to arrive at. So let's, if it's okay with you, we'll go ahead and wade through it a little bit, and then link it back to Tango and the Tango community. So one of the things that we started talking about after Misha's interview, because Misha had started talking about trauma-informed approaches to teaching movement and dance. And you had sent me this PowerPoint presentation that KYCC did a training with their volunteers and employees, I think, on what that means. So I'm just wondering if you can give us like a little bit of a 101 there. Like we've been tossing the word trauma around, like what do we mean by that? And yeah, how does it start manifesting in ways that unintentionally harm the people they love in their community?
Yes. So lots to unpack, but the main takeaway is, and I'm learning this right now too, which is like growing up, I didn't know how many other people had the experiences I had. I was like shameful. I didn't know if it was just us. But the data shows that trauma is so much more prevalent than we realize. It's nearly 70% of the population. And the perception is that like,
and hold on, let me back it up there a little bit. And so when you say 70% of the population, like what? Yes. Like has had a traumatic experience, is walking around with like trauma built up and don't know it, like.
Thank you. Early trauma exposure, and that could be either like an individual experience that was super scary and harmful, or it could be a community experience, like something, it could be a natural disaster, it could be like a violent event. So it could be anything that is considered really traumatic, particularly in early age. So the data shows that 70% of people have had at least one major traumatic experience. And they're like not little ones. They're like, you were, growing up in a home where your parent was or caregiver was significantly mentally ill, or they had severe alcoholism, or, you experience like trauma to your like personhood, like, right, like a violent crime happened to you or in your community. So at least one. And then 1 in 8 have had more than 4. So wow. that made me not only think about like, oh my goodness, that means it's not only the people we serve, but because it's the community as a whole, this means the staff who are helping traumatized people. And this also means as a community, I don't care who you are, where you were, you're a business owner, you're a Tango, instructor, you're a barber, doesn't matter. Like 7 out of 10 people walking in your store or in your business or your school have major trauma in their background. And that doesn't mean that just because you have trauma, like you're gonna like fall apart and you're gonna have severe issues. People respond in different ways, but number one thing that I'm taking away as I'm learning is that it's way, way prevalent. And the myth or the misconception is that, well, those people over there in that neighborhood, they're very traumatized. Or there's a lot of trauma there, and those people over there can help. But this study that was a massive study on ACEs, which is the adverse childhood experience, adverse childhood experience survey. These were done with white people who are college educated. So this is not like over there or those people. It's everywhere and everyone. So that is like the number one thing that I'm taking away. And number two is, given now, what do we do with this information, right? And that's where I think people get stuck and say like, well, somebody should do something about that. Or like people should get therapy, or, mental health organizations or, therapists should deal with that. But there's actually a lot of practical, creative things that I think anyone in the community can do to be more trauma informed and have a trauma informed approach of doing anything. Yeah.
What does that look like? A trauma, like what if you're just like Joe Schmo walking around in the world? You're not necessarily, you don't have a business. You're not, you don't have a specific thing. Like, yeah, what might that look like for someone just in their day-to-day interactions with someone?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would having a more trauma-informed approach to just relating to other people look like?
Yeah, so the really accessible thing about prevention and intervention for trauma is relationships. And that's the one thing I learned from social work school. Out of all the classes, like I remember this one professor saying it's the relationship that heals, and it's actually the tenet of trauma-informed care, which is it's the relationship that could hurt somebody, but it's the relationship that could heal somebody. So when I'm thinking about like, okay, outside of my world, what would a Joe Schmo think? Like, I think, who are you in your environment? So let's take you for an example. Megan, let's say in the Tango world, you are officially a teacher, a business owner. You are whatever official role that you identify yourself to have, right? And then what are your informal roles, right? I'm a friend. I'm a change maker. I'm a leader.
Colleague.
I'm a colleague. I'm a healer. I'm a space holder. I'm a convener, whatever it is, right? So that's like kind of like the brainstorm I'm going through, which is whoever you are, what role do you have in your little bubble or big bubble? And if it's the relationship that can be healing, what can I practically do? And that doesn't mean like I'm doing grounding exercises with people or, doing therapy with people, but what are things that can undo harms in the community? So one thing that I'm trying to do at my work, which we haven't really fully gone into, is review all of our practices and policies and think, what was our original intention? Because we must have had a good intention to have certain like attendance policies or like no refund policy, whatever it is, right? Or how we deal with disruptive kids, like when we suspend kids, right? So how do we like look at everything with a new lens to think, what is our original intention? What was our good intention? And could we identify possible harms from our well-intended policies and practices? That's one. Another thing is, let's say, because Oxygen Tango is such a great space and you're doing so many things that are working, and maybe how classes are run, how rules are how rules are now, maybe everything's fine, but maybe what can you do outside of Tango in the Tango community that could be healing? Could it be like circles of, I don't know, like informal hangouts that are consistent, kind of like what you're doing right now, that are consistent, that are led by people you trust, that are warm, compassionate. Um, so this is kind of like a brainstorm. I literally was thinking about this while I was driving home. I was like, could we have a little small resource book at Oxygen Tango for like concrete needs or like referrals for other places where people could get help. So we're not getting really deep into stuff, but like I'm better able to recognize and maybe connect people to outside resources. So there's a lot of things that we can do that we don't realize. And as a teacher and as a leader, like you and Dave, and as peers who are dancing with each other, who are like, supporting each other's growth and healing, maybe it's something as little as my tone of voice, right? So yeah. I'm just, I don't have all the ideas, but like that would be a great thing to like continue to chew on and think like, oh, there's little things we could do and big things we can do.
Yeah. Okay. I want to table that for a second because I want to come back and brainstorm some more. But I want to get a little bit more. So like, how do you know when you're in a situation where you're dealing with trauma? What does it look like? Like, how do you recognize it? How do you know when? Is it like I should always be walking around assuming that like there's trauma coming at me from all directions all the time? Or like, are there specific things to look for to know when somebody is experiencing it? Like, what do we need to know about what it looks like and what is happening for the person that's experiencing it, and possibly also recognizing it in ourselves?
Yes, great question. And I was thinking about the fact that I think earlier during the pandemic, you guys told your community members that you can reach out anytime. You could private message Dave or Megan if you need any help or if you're going through something, right? So that could be a vehicle through which somebody could voluntarily tell you like, man, I went through this major experience. They could tell you explicitly. Now you know, right? Or we talked earlier about like how people respond very, very differently to trauma experience. Some people are completely fine. They're like, they go through a horrific experience and they're fine. Other people, you'll be able to kind of tell their little signals, and some of the classic signals are like, they don't look very present when you're engaging with them because they're very hypervigilant, they're nervous, they're anxious. They could be just emotionally very raw. They like sometimes like get very reactive. So there's like little signals as just a friend or a colleague you would recognize. And this is where I think like the subtlety and like the finesse comes in and the trust comes in, where you could privately approach somebody if you felt like something was there, and it's like an individual decision, because some people like you can approach and other people maybe not. Yeah.
I see. What are ways to recognize, like, I think I'm still trying to wrap my head around, like, so there's we experience this trauma and it sort of like lives inside of our bodies, and then, if not maybe dealt with or recognized, it starts affecting our behavior as adults. What would I be looking for to recognize it in myself? Like, how would I know, like, oh, like that's that trauma coming up again? Like, what are there things to look for or to know when you're sort of, and what does it even mean to be like in your trauma or having a trauma response? Like, what does that mean?
I think, and I'll use myself as an example, because for the longest time, I didn't acknowledge that I had a lot of trauma background. I just thought like, oh, like this happened to me or this wasn't my background. But it's only when I started really suffering at work, and that could be in your relationship, it could be in your parenting, but for me, it was in work, where I would just, every 6 months, I would have a major breakdown at work. I'm not able to focus. I'm resentful. And that's burnout too. But it so I think it's really like the practice of insight that helps. Number one, recognizing that trauma is prevalent. So I could be one of these people that experiences. So you have to do a little life review, but also acknowledging that you could have had like a, like a maladaptive way of responding to trauma, and then it's just in you. So the other thing I learned is that it literally changes not only your relationships and how you function, but it changes your DNA, how your cells replicate. It changes your brain structure, how your brain even functions. So it's there. You just don't see it. So it's
So for
only
you,
when
it was kind of like manifesting as like you're presented with conflict at work and like you can't deal with it, or like you're like flying off the handle and you don't know why. You're like breaking down in tears and you don't know why, like that kind of stuff.
yeah. So I would broadly, like blame externally as like, sorry, there's a fire truck. It's not supportive. Like a lot of it would be like in my relationship with my supervisor. Like I would have all these external like blaming statements. Maybe part of that's true, part of it's not. But it's looking at myself. I realize it's like I'm highly reactive. So that is a signal to me. Like check into that. It doesn't mean necessarily there's a trauma response and like it could be in anything. It could have been burnout. It could have just been really, you're not supported, but it's this constant, like, what happened? How did I react? Why did I react that way? And why is this such like a trigger for me? Just constantly asking yourself why, I think helps to get to that analysis. And then that is when you could start having kind of like a recovery plan, you know? To learn a lot more, and like you do a lot of self-care activities or hobbies, confronting people, acknowledging things in yourself so that you don't act like that again, because something has nothing to do with your supervisor, nothing to do with your colleagues, nothing to do with your work.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, when I think about the times where like I was embarrassed about how I behaved in a situation, a lot of times when I try to think about what happened, it's even hard for me to like remember the details of it, because like every cell in my body, all of my synapses were just like firing, and I felt like I was this like just primal ball of like emotion kind of, and almost feeling like I didn't have much control over how I was responding. That's what I think of. I'm not sure if that's what my trauma response is, but that's how I think of it right now, is when there's like conflict, or there's something happening and I cannot choose what I'm going to do. I feel like I'm being like, there's like it's out of my control how I'm going to respond. There's like something inside of me working.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we rest that like, oh, I have anxiety, I'm anxious, or I have depression, or I'm depressed. But really the root of that is actually highly related to trauma. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I was reading a little comment. Dave said my mic was scratching my hair, or my hair was scratching my mic, so I got distracted. Can you say that last little part again? That last sentence you said?
Oh, so sometimes when like we like see signals like, oh man, I really reacted, like I was highly emotional about this or whatever, which is a signal that gives you like a cue to like have some like internal assessment. Sometimes we rest at like, oh, I'm depressed, or depression, or anxiety, or I'm anxious. But usually at the root of that is usually trauma. Not always, but usually trauma. So sometimes we like kind of are able to label the emotion and the state that we're in, but sometimes it's related to trauma, like deeper.
And I think it was really spot on what you said. Like, I think there's so much shame around. I know for me, it took me a long time and a lot of therapy just to be able to say out loud, like, I had a rough childhood. Like, I had a tough time growing up, because in my head, like, I knew of so many ways in which it could have been worse, right? Like I thought that, you know, I had a roof over my head, I had food on my table, like I was going to school. And so there was just all of this like guilt about sort of, I guess, letting myself have like sympathy for myself and letting myself like feel sorry for myself and like admit that like a lot of like bad shit went down, and it wasn't normal and it wasn't healthy. And so I think of that, that's honestly a big, like you said, there people don't want to think of what has happened to them as traumatic, or is like, because I don't know, there's this like, I don't know if it's an American thing or what, this like this like reluctance to sort of identify yourself as someone who went through something really terrible and might need help because that happened to you, you know?
Yeah. So what I kind of noticed, I don't know about you, is some people severely under identify and report that, even though they went through really, really hard times or experiences. Other people over report that. Does that
Oh,
make sense?
interesting. Oh
Yeah,
God,
like, oh,
that's what I'm
it's
terrified
like,
of. I'm terrified that I'm like the over reporter, you know? How do you know if you're the over reporter?
yeah. Me too. That's why for the longest time I didn't identify myself as like having like a really like, I wouldn't call it trauma. I would just like, kind of like distance myself from it. I would acknowledge that there was hardship, but like I would have a really hard time saying that. And like the third response is like complete like distancing yourself from it. Like back, when I said like those people over there
Yeah.
in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that you brought up that one of the ways forward for people to heal from trauma is through relationships and through connection. It feels like it's becoming clearer and clearer and more distilled for me how so like the root of so much of what's wrong with our society is we're just increasingly isolated from each other, like in our own little private bubbles, like on our phones, in our own little cars. Like we're not very dependent on each other. You can sort of have your whole life and not really come into contact with people at all. You don't have to grow food with them. You don't have to you don't need them to help you raise your kids. Like you don't need them for entertainment. You don't need you can get all of that like sitting on your couch in your house. And it just feels like it takes me back to the beginnings of what I loved about, before I was running Oxygen, like what I loved about Oxygen and what I thought was important about it outside of just being a place to go dance was I wasn't finding like connection and community in many places in my life. It felt rare. It felt special, and it felt like something that was helping people in a way more than just giving them a place to like shake their ass, right? Not that that's not also important. Very big fan of ass shaking. So let's go. I just want to go into this for like just a few minutes because then I want to like get into all of your fabulous hobbies and like celebrate the amazing person that you are. This trauma-informed stuff feels really relevant to me, to the Tango community. Some people think like, why should a Tango school have a resource book for people to be referred to other services? Like, we're not we're a Tango school. Like, what business do we have? What business do we have talking about race? What business do we have like, kind of getting involved with people like that? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm not even sure. I don't know. I think, there's certainly, you can have a Tango school and you can have Tango classes where you're not thinking about any of those things. I'm certainly interested in it. But yeah, why would a Tango school have a resource book for referring people out?
Exactly why. The truth is, the people or places where people think should be doing that are not where people hang out. They're hanging out at churches. They're hanging out at the salon. they're hanging out at Oxygen or another dance studio, for it to really be impactful in a large scale, it can't be like the traditional mental health clinics or whatever. First of all, people don't want to go there anyways because they're highly stigmatized. But also, that's not naturally where people chill. It's really right. Remember when I was going to Oxygen like 5 times a week? That was my second home outside of work, which happened to be a nonprofit, but I could have been working at a bank or anywhere. So where people naturally hang out is where people can actually be impacted, either whether that's being linked to the right services or having healing relationships or like meaningful activities, like human bonding. That's where like it's at. It's not where you think it is.
So interesting though. So then is there some line that we'll cross where now people think of us as like the hooey dooey mental health tango school, and now they don't want to come there because they don't want to be bothered with all that? Like that, I think that's something that I have a lot of fear of, is like, like it or not, like tango is a place people come to lonely and brokenhearted. Like we just see it over and over and over again. And so for me, there is a responsibility, not just responsibility, I just have a desire to welcome and support and to like hold those people as best as I can. But yeah, I think it's really important for at the tango community to be talking politics and talking about social justice and talking about anti-Blackness and talking about Black liberation and all of those things. But I also very much fear, and talking about trauma-informed approaches and all of this stuff, I very much fear that like all of a sudden people start thinking of us as it's like a drag to like show up there, right? Like it's too heavy, it's too like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Like they're not coming here for the same reason they don't want to go to the mental health clinic.
Yeah, totally. I think it is a business decision you have to make. It's a branding. It's like a call to action that you guys have to answer for yourself, and every place needs to answer for themselves. You clearly did not think you should talk about movement for Black lives and gender equity and all that stuff. You felt compelled. You took that risk because you felt no other recourse than to address it as a tango school. And you didn't care what the risk was, right? And that's why you did so much of the homework and the bringing of the people together and the unlearning and all that, right? So this is just one other area where you could maybe feel extremely compelled and maybe not. But if you do feel some kind of like not the should, but like I want to and I must, then you just have to do what's reasonable. You don't have to organize everything and change everything about Oxygen Tango. You can just do a little thing. And it could, on the surface, look like nothing has changed. It could be just little things you do in your relationships and your activities, right? The way in which you relate to your students. Or it could be like something as visible and obvious as like a resource book that's sitting, in the front desk. So that's totally up to you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think certainly I don't know. I think it will turn some people off. Like I think, and I think we've seen that it has, especially for a lot of people. Like there's this thing that happens, and it's not. I don't want to say dangerous. Like it's very natural. Like you're coming to tango to forget about your day and forget about your troubles and forget about your stresses and your worries, and it's very important to have that. But yeah, I know for me, there's not enough places in the world where people who don't have anyone or for people who don't have a sense of community can go, And I think that, I don't know, Oxygen was that place for me when I first started going. And I know tango was, even for people that were at places that weren't thinking about that at all and who don't have that focus, like tango became that place for them. And And I know for me, like all of this stuff that we've been talking about this whole summer, and what we're talking about right now is about having as many people as possible show up to auction and have the same experience that I did and have the same experience that you did. Like, this is a place where I can come and I'm accepted and people like me and they want to touch me and they want to dance with me and all of that. Okay. Can we switch subjects very abruptly because we only have 8 minutes left? I can't believe it. And I just want to thank you for like your vulnerability and your candor in that discussion. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
So you are a woman of like so many talents, so many interests. I don't even know where to begin. You're a jewelry maker. You are an excellent chef. You are an excellent baker. You had a diaper cake business. No, diaper something business. You are fabulous with decorations and table centerpieces. I think I'm missing some things. Tell me what I'm missing. What are your other hobbies?
Oh, I have to sing and take photography.
Photography, yes. Your beautiful photographs for Oxygen Tango. You should go on Oxygen Tango's Instagram and look at Nayon's beautiful, beautiful work. But how do you have the time for any of this? Like, you're running KYCC, which is a huge nonprofit, like supporting the Koreatown community in so many ways. How do you have time to also like make jewelry and like be into fashion and cook delicious meals? Like, how?
So I did have to acknowledge that my blood, like my lineage, is we're artisans. Like, we make things with our hands. So I have to really honor that and like let it be free as much as possible. I was wondering whether, I always felt like an artist trapped in like a responsible life because I was the firstborn, and in some ways I was very envious of my younger sister who got to live this fashionista life. She got to study in New York and go to Italy to like study fashion, and I didn't get to do that because I had to be like the responsible one. So I always felt like this like torment of like, I'm an artist but I have to be responsible. But I was also very passionate about helping people. So I resolved that, which is that, you really don't have to necessarily do it as a profession, but just do it like a lot and live it out loud, in your other time. So, and this is also the acknowledgement of like who I am in terms of my heritage and stuff. But the other thing is really honoring also my personal disposition, which is I'm highly introvert. I'm very shy. I like to do solo activities, which is another reason why I was so stressed at work, because it requires a lot of like being out there and
You make friends so quickly wherever you go.
Yeah, there's that, because I like to take care of people. So there's a mixture of stuff. I'm a salesperson. That's also in my heritage. Like, we are merchants. We're artisans and we're merchants. So I do naturally constantly like sell anything that I believe in, whether it's social services or diaper cakes or whatever I love. That's why I can freely and happily and passionately spread the evangelism of Oxygen Tango, because I love it so much. Like, you can't stop me, right? So I am naturally that. But going back to my hobbies, I think I talked about it the last time. All my hobbies are solo activities. Cooking, they could be parallel play or group activities, but I like to cook by myself. I like to do things that are like I'm by myself, like doing wire wrapping or taking making food. So the way I engage socially is very different, but the activity itself is very solo. And the third part of it is really healing. In my line of work, I felt like it was constant onslaught of problems, and you have to like have an answer right away. And especially during the pandemic, where I just felt completely like this onslaught of, things I didn't anticipate and being so overwhelmed. But cooking and any of my hobbies that are creative in nature is like this contained chaos, like to manage it, right? And that could have gone in a very bad direction, right? It could have been a very bad addiction or whatever, but like I think it's a healthy outlet for this very manageable chaos that has a beginning and end. I get to be super creative. I get to like, and the other thing I hate, which is group projects. I hate group projects. I, hated it throughout high school and college, but I'm really forced to work in group think and like group, processes at work, which I'm learning a lot from. But at the heart, I like to be responsible for myself only. I don't want to talk to other people. It's very selfish. So, so it's part of my healing and just, really answering the call of like who I am in my lineage.
Wow. Who taught you to cook?
I'm not really a chef. I'm not a trained chef, but I love to cook, not because of the cooking itself, but I do think that the kitchen is where healing happens, whether you're by yourself or with others. Intergenerationally, it's one of the most effective ways to cooperate and have communion and have conversation without it being forced. People are like forced to eat together. I don't think that is very artificial, like, yeah, you can have a nice dinner conversation, be forced to sit at the table, but when you're like baking together or cooking together, if you have an introverted child who doesn't like to talk, who's much more like thing driven, they don't have to talk. They can just like cook or, make things with you, measure things with you, time things. They don't have to talk. They're not pressured to talk. But if you have a very extroverted relational child or friend, you could just chit chat like crazy and there's no like agenda or, it's not forced. So I think it's such a beautiful, natural place. And across all ethnic groups, particularly for women, that's the place of healing and communion. So I had like this project idea a couple of years ago on how to integrate cooking and healing. And I didn't get to it. So that tells me I was clearly not that passionate because I was able to do Tango for 15 hours a week. But I couldn't so that tells me a lot. But anyways, so it goes. But actually our work is integrating a lot of cooking and intergenerational work. So it's like, okay, I can still like, appreciate and, witness that, the magic of that. But,
I mean, any party, people end up in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Even at Oxygen, where we have this little, like, it's not even a kitchen, it's just where, like, the kitchen-like stuff is. There would always be people congregating around that area.
So
I mean, the food's also there, and they're picking at the food, but I think it's something more than that. A lot of times it's not, nobody's actively eating. It just feels like that's the place to go to sort of connect more deeply with each other.
Yeah. And that's where some of the secrets come out. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Unplanned. Yeah. Like it just comes out naturally because nobody's expected to. So it sometimes comes out naturally. So.
I love that. The kitchen is where unexpected secrets come out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start now spending all of my time. If I am whenever we have parties again, I'm just gonna go directly to the kitchen and wait for people to come in and tell me their secrets. Hey, will you shout out your Instagram handles so that people, if you want to see some food porn, you need to friend Nayon on Instagram. She's constantly taking photos and videos of the yummy stuff that she's cooking. And what's your Instagram handle?
All my handles are Korean Diva because I'm that old and I took it all when I was back in the day. But Korean Diva for everything, Korean Diva. Thank you for promoting that.
Yeah, you got it. I also want to give a little shout out to KYCC Koreatown I always forget what it stands for. Koreatown Youth and Children's
Community center.
Koreatown Youth and Community Center.
Uh-huh.
I think that the work that you guys are doing is just amazing. Just supporting the community in every facet, and I think being real leaders and continuing to develop like new ways to look at your work and new ways to bring the community closer and new ways to hold yourselves accountable. So I really highly recommend anybody watching to check out KYCC and to also throw them some money if you have extra, because they are holding down bottom line support for people that are essential workers and who are at risk and marginalized. They're helping. They're doing childcare for people that need childcare. They're helping people with their taxes. They were drumming up people to take the census. They're doing intergenerational work, connecting youth with older generation. I'm not even covering all of it. I've only like covered 10%. But just really, really incredible, necessary work. And I know also that the KYCC community has been hit hard by COVID, and that's something that like I continue to just try to keep in my own mind. Sometimes it feels very far away from me. I don't know many people, or really, everybody I know that's been really hugely impacted by it is 1 to 2 degrees away from me. And then, when I start feeling a little, I don't know, I just remember like what you all are going through at KYCC, like the kind of stuff that you're dealing with the pandemic and how real it is and how it's hurting, how much hurt that there is, and that people are dying and are getting very sick and are losing more than one family member at a time. How are you doing with that? Are you okay? It's gotta be fucking intense.
It is. We're learning a lot. I feel like I almost feel so blessed to be talking to you today, which I feel like is kind of like the end of like 2020 for me, and how I'm going to be more prepared for 21. Yeah, we've had things we never expected, challenges we've never expected. But I'm for an organization that's super old, we're 45 years old, we're very young in some of our development, like a lot of this equity work and just, checking ourselves, being better trained. We're still growing. So it's a very dynamic place. It's youthful in a way. So there's a lot of hope in future change for us. So in that way, yes, that's exciting and like hopeful. But the other part is I am extremely grateful for all the internal policies and practices and leadership we have outside of me and the staff we have, that we've been able to be, knock on wood, extremely safe internally, despite being publicly open and serving the community. So that is a testament of all the labor that our HR put in, our COO, like all of our staff to like put in their work to be responsible, because it could have been horrific, being put out there. Yeah. So I have a lot of faith, and we've been tested and we're coming out okay. Yeah. Thank you for your support and always being such a great ambassador for our agency that you don't even work at. Thank you.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm an ambassador for Nayon Kang, and then by extension, KYCC.
Thank you.
We didn't even talk about. We're over time. And I thank you so much, Nayon. You're such just a blessing in our community. I'm so glad that you found us, and it's hard for me to remember Oxygen Tango before you. You've become so embedded and important, and I think in a lot of ways has single-handedly kept some people in the community by befriending them and by looking out for them. And then, of course, just our fabulous Instagram account, which just really leveled up after you took it over. So, and then you just a really great advisor and friend to me too. Yeah, I'm just really grateful for that, and thank you for, spending this time with us. As I've mentioned, you are one busy lady, so I'm really grateful that you sat here with me for an hour to talk about these things.
And I'm here because I trust in your leadership, you and Dave's leadership. In addition to the great friends in the community of Tango, but you guys are really the reason why I'm still connected and why so many of us are connected. So thank you. We wouldn't be here without you guys. So
yeah. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
you too.
I hope you get to have some rest and some downtime. And that goes the same for everybody out there. Happy holidays. If I want to reiterate that offer that we talked about earlier, if you need anything, if you're lonely, just want to hang out, you can message us. Yeah, we are here for you. We miss everybody so much. Thank you, Nayan. Let's make sure we talk before the new year. I want to set some resolutions.
Okay.
Okay.
We have to talk about makeup tips next time.
Okay, thanks. How did I do?
You did great.
I feel like I'm not even used to seeing myself with makeup on, so I feel like I look like I'm 12 with makeup on. Yeah, I would love to get some makeup tips. There's particularly some eyebrow things.
Not for you. You're great.
Oh, you mean for the studio? Yeah, not for me. This is going fine.
Thank you. I love you.
Right. Love you too. Good night, dude.
Bye.
Bye.